Welcome to JoBlo Horror Originals Best 4 in Horror, where we take a look at significant horror titles from all over the world. Today we're going to discuss a Spanish horror film that has nothing to do with Oscar winner and genre great Guillermo del Toro. He is a legend, and even his least appreciated work, Looking at You, Mimic, is a lot of fun at points. Today we'll look at a country that doesn't get nearly the credit it deserves like Japan or Italy does. Today we will discuss a movie that got an almost immediate American remake and 3 surprise sequels. Today is all about 2007's Wreck. While you can find a handful of Spanish horror films that date back to the earlier part of the 20th century, I would argue that the Spanish language version of Universal's Dracula that was shot at night should be the first impactful one. Due to regulations, culture, and several government regimes, there really isn't much there from the 30s until the 60s. But once it opened up, there were a few creators that really took advantage and exploded onto the scene. First up is Jess Franco, who has a staggering 206 titles under his belt and would be one of the premier directors of horror and other genre work in his career. His film The Awful Dr. Orloff from 1962 is sort of a remake of the French classic Eyes Without a Face, but has much more of a grindhouse feel. He also filmed a few Fu Manchu movies with Christopher Lee and had a little scene slasher from 1981 called Bloody Moon. A ton of his stuff is available every now and then on Shudder, but for physical media hounds, Severin Films is your place for Uncle Jess. Another huge name in Spanish cinema around that time was full-on auteur Paul Naschy. Naschy was a writer, director, and actor who spoke multiple languages and made movies in a variety of genres. I think horror is his specialty, and it's a bummer he isn't more well known. He would take on and try to reinvent a ton of the classic monsters like Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, the Wolfman, and some post-Romero zombies. Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, The Werewolf vs. the Vampire Woman, and Vengeance of the Zombies are just a few of his output in the 70s, and his main era was the late 60s to the early 80s. While most of his properties aren't streaming most places, our friends at Scream Factory have put together 2 wonderful Blu-ray sets that give you a good taste of what you'll get with his stuff. While Armando de Osorio has far fewer titles to his name, his Blind Dead set of films has a larger cult status than anything Franco or Naschy ever did. Tombs of the Blind Dead was the first one, and it was released in 1972, and the following 3 movies would conclude with Night of the Seagulls in 1975. Yeah, he didn't do himself any favors with his naming. The middle 2 films are called Return of the Evil Dead, no relation, and Ghost Galleon. They are fun curios and come in an epic box set coffin if you can track it down. He had horror movies before and after, but The Blind Dead is what he'll always be known for. While the 60s, 70s, and 80s would be packed with movies, mostly from these 3 gentlemen, the ensuing decades would slow down in output but still have quality with the assorted horror of Alex de Iglesia, Guillermo del Toro, and a surprise English language hit with The Others. While Pieces, The Orphanage, and others deserve time and attention, Wreck came at the right time with the right style to really resonate and distance itself from the rest of the pack. Wreck opens rather innocuously enough with a reporter named Angela and her cameraman Pablo working on the newest episode of their show While You Were Sleeping. This episode is dedicated to following the night shift at a fire station, and it's a pretty slow night. They meet the team, take a trip around the station, and end up playing some pickup basketball before a call finally comes through to the station, and they're excited that the night won't be a total loss. Barcelona will see some action after all. The calls come from an apartment building, and when they enter, there's a bit of chaos and uncertainty with the occupants all down the lobby avoiding the screams of an old woman, which is why the call was made in the first place. Angela and Pablo are allowed to accompany the 2 firefighters inside. They let Alex and Manu in first, and they see a couple of police officers and the old woman, Miss Izquierdo, looking very confused and disoriented. As they approach her, she attacks and bites one of the cops before being restrained. When they take the injured officer downstairs, they are informed that the building is now on lockdown and being covered in some sort of sheet or protective covering. They won't send anyone else in and certainly won't let anyone out of the building either. While there is fear mixed in with the confusion at first, this is ratcheted up to 11 when the officer who was not bitten by Mrs. Izquierdo falls down from above and lands with a splat in the middle of the residence. The now rabid Mrs. Izquierdo kills one of the tenants before being gunned down, presumably for good. Our news team decides now is the best time to be investigative journalists and speaks to some of the other inhabitants. We get your older couple, a gossipy gentleman who likes to think he knows everything, an Asian family that doesn't speak the language very well, and some more of your typical tropes. There's also a mother and daughter, with the young girl being sick with tonsillitis, according to her mother. They make a point of mentioning the girl's dog is sick at the vet, and this will become both Chekhov's dog and a good red herring for later. Finally, the group gets some answers when a health inspector comes through the building and looks to help the injured who are still alive. They become suddenly aggressive and attack both he and some helpers, with one of them being stuck inside a room to die with two zombie-like residents. They lock off the part of the building where the attackers are and demand answers from the health inspector. He explains that there is a deadly and as of yet unseen strain of rabies going around that is incredibly contagious, while also being more aggressive and not treatable like other cases are. The reason why the building is being sealed off is because the strain has been traced to have origins from within the building. It clicks for everyone, and they realize that the mother-daughter combo and their sick dog must be patient zero. The mom desperately tries to defend her child and says she is okay before her entire argument is negated when the daughter takes a huge bite out of her. They handcuff the mom for her and their own good and go locate the girl. They find her, but she's completely infected and bites the remaining officer, Sergio. He locks himself inside the room with her, but the Asian family has accidentally let out their infected grandfather, while the three infected that were locked off break through and head upstairs, infecting everyone they come across. The final three survivors, Manu, the last of the firefighters, Pablo, and Angela, flee upstairs to find a route out, but Manu allows them to get in the penthouse while sacrificing himself. In the penthouse, our final survivors find a recording explaining that a priest from the Vatican was sent to do an exorcism, only to discover that the possession acted like a virus. He locked the possessed girl in the penthouse in the hopes that she would starve, but Pablo and Angela find out that she isn't quite dead, and they don't make it out to tell the story. This movie is 78 minutes of mostly breakneck action. There's very little fluff that doesn't also include some pertinent information, and really, it's just at the beginning. I think the first scene that gets the film going in earnest isn't when the old woman bites her first victim. It's when the police officer falls down the middle of the staircase and shocks everyone with something real. Only a couple people in the apartment building saw Mrs. Izquierdo go crazy, but everyone feels the fear and uncertainty when the horror lands, quite literally, 5 feet from them. It's the first of a few good subversions of expectations that the movie has up its sleeve. The other standout part is the final 10 or so minutes when Pablo and Angela end up in the penthouse and find out what's really going on. The fact that the movie pulls a last-minute change-up and goes from fast zombies that spawn from rabies to demon-possessed people that can pass on the possession via bite. It asks more questions than it answers, but that's the best possible thing for this. Please watch the movie before we show you what this poor girl looks like, because she is one of the most frightening creations that I have seen in some time. It stalks our remaining victims in the dark that we only see through the night vision mode of Pablo's camera. The creature is emaciated, but still huge and clearly strong. It also has the intelligence and dexterity to use weapons. The final seconds where Angela is dragged away are a chilling end to their story, but may be only the beginning of the threat. Lead actress Manuela Velasco has 56 credits to her name, but never outside of the Spanish TV or film realm. You can catch her in the first and third sequels to Rec, or a handful of soap operas that had decent runs. Most of the rest of the cast would appear in multiple sequels for the franchise, but for a first on this show, American audiences wouldn't see any crossover in big hit films, and would only see them by venturing further into Spanish TV and cinema. Co-director Jaime Balaguero would helm Rec 2 and 4, while recently breaking through the international space with the Freddie Highmore and Liam Cunningham-led The Vault in 2021. The other director of Rec, Paco Plaza, would co-direct Part 2 and solo direct Part 3, and also helm the Netflix smash phenomenon Veronica in 2017. Rec became more of a hit and has a larger legacy than many of the best foreign horrors we've covered over here. In addition to touring the festival circuits when it first came out, Rec would get 3 sequels in its home country. Rec 2 takes place immediately after the first, with a rescue team of sorts sent in to look for survivors and get samples. Rec 3 takes place at a wedding reception and is only tangentially related to the first two, while Rec 4 takes the survivors of the second film and posits them on a ship traveling to find a cure. It's a fun series to watch, but make sure you get the subtitled version of any that you get, because the dubbing is some of the worst I've ever seen. Hollywood would of course capitalize on the hit movie that made $30 million on a $2 million budget, with a remake starring Jennifer Carpenter from Dexter, and written and directed by John Eric Dowdle, who made a far superior and horrifying Poughkeepsie Tapes, as well as The Devil and As Above, So Below. The remake would in turn get a sequel, but let's not talk about that one. Rec is an easy film to recommend and a quick watch. It's brutal, fast, and subverts expectations multiple times. It really stands out as one of the best of the 21st century and one of the best foreign horrors, period. Thank you for watching our show. If you like what you see, please subscribe to our JoBlo Horror Videos channel. Tell your friends who like this sort of content and turn on that bell to receive notifications for all the latest videos. We're an independent company and we appreciate all of your support.